in the kind of discipline that left no room for accidents or feelings. But the morning the board announced the final vote for the chairmanship of Wolf Empire, he realized that control alone would not be enough. The shareholders were old, conservative, obsessed with optics. A bachelor CEO suggested instability, unpredictability, weakness. A wife would convey steadiness, legacy, continuity. He did not want a wife. He needed one. Names crossed his mind like chess pieces, each evaluated and dismissed. Too ambitious. Too calculating. Too entangled in the social circles that watched him like hawks. And then he remembered the hallway. 3 months earlier, after a board confrontation that dredged up memories he spent a lifetime burying, Damien had suffered something he had never allowed anyone to witness: a panic attack. A sudden, suffocating collapse of breath and vision. He had sunk to the floor outside his private conference suite, chest tight, hands shaking, trying to regain control before anyone saw. But someone had. A woman with gentle eyes and steady hands had knelt beside him without asking questions. She didn't touch him at first, just placed herself close enough that he wasn't alone. She spoke softly about nothing important at all: the weather, the art in the hallway, the scent of jasmine in the lobby garden downstairs. Her voice was calm when his world was not. When she realized he needed anchoring, she reached out and placed a hand carefully, respectfully, against his forearm. Solid. Warm. Quiet. 20 breaths later, he was standing again. She did not ask his name. She did not ask what was wrong. She simply nodded and walked away, leaving the moment behind as if it belonged only to him. But he remembered. Alara Hayes. He found her file easily, an administrative assistant in the marketing department, employed on a temporary contract. Her performance was flawless. Her background, humble. Her family, drowning in medical debt from her mother's surgeries. Their home, already in foreclosure proceedings. She was perfect. When he summoned her to his office, she looked at him with the same calm she'd had in the hallway. Not nervous, not starstruck, just present. He explained the arrangement in simple, business-like terms. Marriage, 1 year minimum, a generous stipend, full financial coverage for her family, public appearances required, no emotional expectations. Alara listened in silence. She said yes without trembling, not because she wanted him, because she wanted to save the people she loved. The wedding was private, efficient, polished like a press release. Their hands touched only when required to exchange rings. His lips brushed her cheek instead of her mouth. Her fingers did not cling to his. They were two figures completing a transaction. That night, the mansion felt too large, too silent. Damien stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows in their bedroom, staring out at the city lights, his empire, glowing and distant. Alara moved softly in the room behind him, changing into sleep clothes, pulling back covers on the opposite side of the bed. Her presence was quiet, deliberate, respectful of boundaries. Yet he felt it, the awareness of her, the warmth of another human heartbeat in a space that had known only emptiness. He did not turn. He did not speak. But he did not sleep either. Alara lay still, eyes open in the dark, breathing controlled, as if afraid to disturb him. And Damien, for the first time in years, realized the silence he once worshipped now felt like something else. Entirely. Loneliness. He woke before dawn every day after the wedding, and she learned to move quietly around, him as if they were two ghosts sharing the same walls. The mansion felt like a museum where nothing was meant to be touched, and Alara tried to take up as little space as possible. She brewed coffee in the mornings and placed 1 cup on the marble counter for him without a word. Damien never thanked her, but he drank it every time. Their arrangement was clear. Public appearances together, controlled smiles. No questions. No heart, yet silence has weight. It presses. It reveals Alara noticed small things. The way his hand sometimes shook when he thought no one was watching. The way he avoided the piano room, even though dust never gathered there, which meant someone cleaned it daily under strict instruction. The way he stared at the door when he came home at night, as if expecting someone who never existed. She wondered who had once stood where she stood now. One evening, Catalina arrived unannounced. Her heels clicked on the marble floors like a metronome of tension. She embraced Damien with a practiced warmth that never reached her eyes, and then she turned that same gaze on Alara. Polite, evaluating, sharp. "So this is the wife," she said in a tone, dipped in honey that tasted somehow bitter. Alara smiled because she had been taught how to be, respectful in every room, even hostile ones. "Yes, I am." Catalina's smile widened, but her eyes did not shift. "Do not mistake position for belonging. This house remembers who fits and who does not." Damien stepped slightly closer then. A subtle movement, protective but silent, Catalina noticed. Her expression flickered. "So the contract is already working," she murmured before leaving them with the echo of her perfume and her warning. That night, Damien worked late in his office. Alara could hear the quiet clink of glass, the slow exhale of someone trying to outrun his own mind. She did not approach him. The hallway memory lingered between them, though unspoken. She walked past the library and paused. Something was different. Books she had arranged that morning were scattered across the table. Papers like storm debris, a broken pen, and in the center a single photograph face down. She should have kept walking. But curiosity is louder than caution when loneliness is involved. She flipped the photograph. Damien, years younger, standing beside a piano. His hand held a woman's shoulder. The woman's expression was radiant and familiar. Not because Alara knew her, but because the affection in the picture was something she had never seen in Damien's eyes. He entered the room before she could set the photograph down. He stopped. Not angry, not startled, just still, as if the world had frozen. Alara held the photo with both hands, gentle, careful. "Who is she?" she asked softly. His jaw tightened. "My mother." Alara searched his face for more. For grief, for memory, for softness. But Damien's expression closed like a locked door. "She died," he said simply, and that was the first time Alara understood that silence could bleed. He walked past her and left the room. Later that night, when she slipped into bed, she listened to his breathing on the other side of the mattress. Steady, but not deep. Awake. Neither of them slept. And for the first time, Alara wondered if love was not the danger in this house, but the absence of it. The nights were the hardest. The mansion was too still, and the silence carried every unspoken thought like footsteps in the dark. Alara would lie on her side of the bed, staring at the ceiling, while Damien lay on his back unmoving. Two strangers separated by only a hand's breadth and an entire world of distance. On the fourth night, she woke to the faint sound of unsteady breathing. Not sleep, not rest. Something tight and restrained. Damien had slipped out of bed and stood in front of the window again. The moon lit his profile in pale silver. His shoulders were rigid, his hands braced against the glass like he was holding himself together by force. Alara pushed the blanket aside and rose without speaking. She did not touch him. She simply stood near him, close enough to be present, but not close enough to intrude, the same way she had once sat beside him in the hallway. His voice surprised her when it came. "You should be asleep." "I could say the same to you," she answered gently. He did not move, and for a moment she thought he would send her away. Instead, he let out a slow, uneven breath, the kind that carries years inside it. Alara could sense the storm inside him even without seeing his face. He spoke again, but quieter. "I do not sleep easily." She nodded, though he was not looking. I noticed. Something in those words loosened something in him. Not enough to break, but enough to crack. "I learned early that sleep leaves you unguarded," he said. "When you sleep, you cannot defend yourself. And in this house, being unguarded was dangerous." Alara understood. Not the details, not the history, but the feeling of living braced for impact. She had grown up protecting her family while the world kept trying to take from them. Maybe their wounds were different, but the ache was familiar. She stepped closer. "Only inches now. If you stay awake to protect yourself, then who protects you from the exhaustion?" she asked softly. His jaw tightened. "I do not need protection. Everyone needs something, Damien. Even if it is only a place to rest." Her voice did not push. It invited. For a long moment, she thought he would turn away. But instead, he spoke a truth so bare, it startled even him. "I I do not remember the last time I rested. Ilara's chest tightened with quiet pain. She reached out very slowly, giving him time to step away. He did not. Her hand touched his arm. Warm skin beneath expensive fabric. His eyes closed as if the contact was a relief he did not have the language to ask for. They stood like that for a long time. No conversation. No explanation. Just presence. When they returned to bed, Damien did not lie on his side of the mattress. He lay closer. Not touching, not yet, but close enough that Ilara felt his breath on her, shoulder and the tension in his body slowly releasing. With each passing moment was the first night he slept. Not because the house was safe, but because she was there. Days passed and a fragile rhythm began to form between them, though neither spoke about it. Damien still left early and returned late, but now when he entered the bedroom at night, his eyes searched for her. He no longer stood at the window alone. He lay beside her, and sleep found him only when she was near. He never acknowledged it, but his breathing told the truth. Ilara didn't ask questions at first. She had learned that Damien gave nothing when chased. Silence was her doorway to him. Yet silence also held shadows. There was something in this house that never settled, something tense like a cord pulled too tight. And the center of that tension was Catalina. Catalina returned often, never announced, never invited, though she acted as though the mansion belonged to her. Ilara would find her standing in rooms she had no reason to enter, lingering near framed photographs, opening drawers as if searching for something. One afternoon, Ilara entered the music room, the one Damien always avoided. Catalina stood there, fingers tracing the polished edge of the black grand piano. The keys gleamed like untouched ice, perfectly clean, perfectly silent. Catalina didn't look at Ilara when she spoke. He hasn't told you about her, has he? Ilara held her ground. Who Catalina finally turned. Her smile had no warmth. The woman who played this piano. The only person Damien ever loved. A sharp ache moved through Ilara even though she had no claim to that part of him. She kept her voice steady. What happened to her? Catalina's gaze flickered to the keys. She died. This house kills softness. Always has. Before Ilara could speak, Damien appeared in the doorway. His expression was calm, but his eyes were not. Catalina excused herself without apology, leaving a quiet tension behind her like smoke. Ilara stepped closer to the piano. The lid was dustless, the stool worn smooth by years of use. Someone had played here often. Someone Damien could not bear to remember, or could not bear to lose again. She turned toward him. Damien, I don't need every detail, but I don't want to walk blind in your life. He looked at the piano instead of her, his voice low. My mother taught me to play. This was her haven. When she died, everything warm in this house went with her. Ilara listened. No pressure, no demand, just presence. He continued slowly, as if each memory was a weight. Catalina arrived after. She believed emotion was weakness, and my father agreed. They wanted a son made of steel, not music, not grief. Ilara's heart tightened, and you believed them. He didn't answer right away. His silence was an answer. She stepped closer until there were only inches between them. You are not steel, Damien, and you are not broken for needing rest, or comfort, or someone to stand beside you. His eyes flicked to hers, then quickly away as if the contact burned. I don't know how to be anything else, he said quietly. Ilara touched his hand. Not taking, just offering. You don't have to know. You only have to try. For a moment she thought he might pull away, but he didn't. His fingers curled around hers slowly, uncertainly, like someone learning touch for the first time in years. Later that night, Damien didn't wait for sleep to find him. He sought her. He lay close enough that their shoulders touched, and when his breathing softened into real rest, His hand remained in hers. Outside the mansion, the wind moved through the trees like a whisper of something shifting. Falling walls, cracking, armor a man learning to feel, and a woman becoming the one place he could finally breathe. The days began to feel different in ways neither of them named Damien. No longer avoided her eyes when they spoke. Alara no longer walked like a guest in her own home. There was a softness growing between them. Dangerous because it was unspoken. Fragile because it was real. The invitations began to arrive. Then charity events. Company galas, photographs for magazines that praised the perfect marriage of the wolf heir. Damien handled each with control. Ilara at his side like a quiet, calm presence, but the gala that evening was different. It was the first time Damien had taken her arm willingly. No cameras, no journalists, no staged smiles, just his hand around hers. Steady warmth. The ballroom was filled with glitter and low conversation, crystal chandeliers, casting light like falling stars. Damien moved through the room with the authority of a man who had never been questioned. But tonight, Alara noticed he watched her more than anyone else watched him. She felt the shift. So did others. A man in a charcoal suit approached her near the garden terrace. Handsome in the way men become handsome when they know they are admired. "You must be the new Mrs. Wolfe," he said with a confident smile. "You look far too gentle for him." Alara smiled politely. "I assure you, gentleness is not weakness." The man leaned closer. Too close. We were all waiting to see how long he would keep up the act. Damien Wolfe does not love. He does not care. He only possesses. Before she could reply, a hand touched the small of her back, firm. Claiming Damien, his voice held nothing sharp, but something dark flickered deep beneath it. "I believe you have spoken enough." The man stepped back, smirked. "Enjoy your cage, Mrs. Wolfe," and walked away. Alara turned to Damien, expecting anger. But what she found was something far more dangerous. Fear not of the man. Not of the rumors, but fear of losing control. He spoke quietly. "It should not have bothered me yet. It did." She placed her hand gently on his chest. "You are not what they think you are." Something in him cracked then, so soft it could have been missed. But she saw it. He leaned closer, just enough for his forehead to rest against hers. Only for a breath. Only for a heartbeat. The music inside faded. The lights blurred. The world narrowed to the space between their bodies. When they returned home, there were no cameras, no guests, no masks. Damien stood in the bedroom doorway, uncertain. His armor loosened. Alara took a slow step forward. Then another. Her hands rose to his collar. Not to remove it, but to hold him. He exhaled a sound not of power, but of surrender. When he kissed her, it was not polished, not calculated, not part of the arrangement. It was hunger. It was need. It was years of silence breaking at once. The kiss deepened his hands and her hair, her breath against his lips. No distance. No caution when they finally pulled apart. Her heart raced. His chest rose and fell unevenly. "This changes everything," he said against her mouth. She whispered back. It was always going to. Neither of them slept alone. That night, neither of them wanted toned had found them, and neither wanted to let go. The morning after changed everything, even though neither of them spoke about it openly. Damien woke with Alara's head on his shoulder, and for the first time in years, his body felt rested, soft, unarmored, dangerously unguarded. He stared at the ceiling as if trying to understand what had happened to him. How a woman he barely knew had become the only place his mind could be quiet. They moved through the day, as if nothing had shifted, but the air hummed with new meaning. He no longer avoided her touch. She no longer avoided his gaze. Their fingertips brushed while passing a dish at breakfast. His hand stayed a moment too long on her back as they walked. Through the hall, tiny, gentle collisions of two people learning each other without words. But peace is rarely allowed to grow unchallenged. Catalina returned again late afternoon. No invitation. The door had not even fully opened before her voice carried. Through the foyer like cold wind, I see the performance is going well, she remarked, running her gloved fingers along the banister. The perfect devoted little wife. Alara stood straighter. She did not rise to bait. She did not shrink either. What do you want, Catalina? Catalina smiled like someone admiring a knife to remind you that every empire built on illusion collapses the moment one of you starts to believe it is real. Damian entered, then silent, powerful. He stood beside Alara without thinking. Of it, the alignment was instinct, not performance. Leif's voice carried no volume, but the walls themselves seemed to listen. Catalina gave a small bow. As you wish. But she paused in the doorway and turned one last time. Though I truly am curious, Damian, are you sleeping now? A direct strike one? Only someone who knew his past could make. Damian didn't answer. He didn't have to. The truth was visible in the calmness behind his eyes. Catalina saw it, and something inside her expression cracked. She left the mansion, but the tension she carried remained. That night, Damian sat at the edge of the bed, still wearing his suit jacket. Not speaking, not moving. Alara joined him without asking her presence. Quiet, her body close, but not touching, until he was ready. Finally, he spoke, his voice rough. She knows me too well. She knows how to break what I build. She has done it before. Alara's hand found his, gently slow, patient. I am not something she can break. He turned to her, then really turned, his eyes steady, but afraid not of her, but of how much she now meant. I do not know how to love without losing control. She held his face in both hands. You do not need to know. You only need to feel. He leaned forward, and this time, the kiss was not hunger, not urgency, not escape. It was surrender, soft, intentional, real, the kind of kiss that rewrites future. Later, as sleep settled over him, his head resting against her chest, his hand loosely curled in the fabric of her nightdress, he breathed evenly, peacefully, fully, and Alara realized the truth that terrified them both. The marriage was no longer an arrangement, no longer a necessity, no longer convenience. It was becoming love, messy, unguarded, dangerous love. And love changes everything, especially men who were never supposed to feel it at all. The change between them did not go unnoticed outside the walls of the mansion. Rumors began spreading quietly through the boardrooms. The cold, untouchable Damian Wolf was no longer distant. He was distracted, less sharp in negotiations, less ruthless. In decisions and in the world he lived in, love was not seen as strength. Love was seen as an opening. Catalina was not the only one watching. Now, others were waiting, calculating, deciding how to use Alara to reach him. The shift began subtly. A canceled meeting that no one scheduled, cancellation for a contract he never signed. Though his signature was on it, numbers shifting in accounts he had not touched. Someone was moving inside his empire. Damian noticed, but he didn't speak of it. Not yet, Own. Evening, Alara was in the garden, cutting lavender for the vase near their bed when she felt someone watching her. She turned but saw no one. Still, the sensation stayed, a prickle at the back of her neck. The sense of being observed by an unseen gaze. When she returned to the house, she found Damian in the music room. The piano lid was open, though he still did not play. He sat in silence, looking at the keys, like he was trying to remember how to breathe. She sat beside him, close enough to feel his warmth, but not close enough to interrupt his thoughts. He spoke without looking at her. Someone is trying to move against me. She didn't react with panic. She didn't ask how bad. Instead, she asked the only question that mattered. Why now? Because I have something to lose. The word struck deep. Because he didn't say power. He didn't say position. He didn't say empire. He said something, not something. Someone. The silence after the admission felt alive. Alara reached out and laid her hand on top of his. His fingers tightened instantly, as if he had been waiting for her to anchor him again. Whoever is doing this, she said softly. They chose the wrong moment to try. He finally looked at her. his gaze deep dark and full of something that had been silent for too long. "Do you know what you are asking for? Staying beside me now means a war. Not rumors, not cold rooms and polite smiles. Real war." Alara did not look away, her voice steady. "Then we go to war together." For the first time in years, Damien smiled. Not the sharp business smile, not the public mask, but something real, almost boyish, startling in its softness. And in that moment, a new kind of bond formed between them. Not tender, not gentle, but iron-strong. Their marriage had started as a contract grown into quiet. Companionship blossomed into fragile love, but now it was becoming alliance partners, not just in home but in battle. Neither of them knew the most dangerous truth of all. The person moving inside Damien's empire was already inside the house already, inside their circle, and the first strike had already been set in motion waiting to fall. The first strike came quietly. Not with noise, not with confrontation, but with absence. Damien returned home late that evening, and the guards at the gate did not greet him. The lights of the mansion glowed warmly, but the silence inside was thick too, complete. Too careful. Alara was not in the bedroom, not in the garden, not in the music room where she often sat reading. Now he called her name once, no answer. His chest tightened. Not fear at first, but memory. The old instinct of losing what he loves. The instinct that had shaped his entire life. He moved through the house quickly, controlled, focused, but every empty hallway felt like a thread. Found her in the old study, the one no one used, the door half open. She stood by a table holding a folder she had clearly not meant to find. She looked up when he stepped inside. Her eyes were not angry, not afraid, but hurt. She held up the papers. "These were in your private safe, and they have my name on them." Damien's throat tightened because he recognized the documents instantly. The contract. The original contract. The one that did not speak of a year. The one that stated her presence was to stabilize his public image and could be dissolved once his position was secure. A contract drafted before he knew her, before she became the only person who could quiet his storms. Before she became home. Alara's voice was soft, but soft can be sharper than knives. "Tell me the truth, Damien. How long was I supposed to stay before you decided I was unnecessary?" Again, he stepped forward, but she stepped back, not far, but enough to say, "I need honesty." Not touch, he spoke slowly. Carefully each word, heavy when I drafted. That I did not know you. I did not know what you would mean. I did not know that your presence would be the only reason I sleep. Alara breathed out, slow, unsteady. And yet you kept this. You kept the version where I was temporary. Damien's jaw clenched because the truth was painful. I was afraid that if I rewrote it, if I made you real in my life, you would see how much power you had and leave the silence between them pulsed. "I was temporary in your mind," she said, "but you became permanent in mine." That was the wound. Before Damien could answer, the door at the end of the hall opened, light footsteps, a whisper of perfume. Catalina. Her smile was gentle, almost tender and therefore cruel. "My timing is unfortunate, it seems." Damien turned cold, sharp. "What did you do?" Catalina lifted one elegant shoulder. "I simply placed the truth where it could be found. Some things deserve light." Alara understood everything. Then the missing guards, the open safe, the manufactured silence. Catalina had not struck directly at the company. She had struck at the bond they were building. The one thing she knew Damien did, not know how to defend. Alara looked at Damien, and the ache in her chest was not doubt but heartbreak. "You should have told me before she did." She walked past both of them, and Damien let out a sound, quiet but full of something breaking. He moved to follow her. But Catalina spoke one last time. A soft warning. "If you go after her broken, you will shatter what little trust you have left. Choose your next move carefully." Damien stopped in the hallway, breathing hard. Hands clenched, the house silent. Again, Alara walked to the guest wing and closed the door. Not slammed. Not locked. Just closed. A line drawn softly but unmistakably. That night, Damien did not sleep. Not because she was gone, but because she was still there, and too far to touch. Damien did not leave her alone that night, but he did not knock on her door either. He stood outside it, hands braced against the frame, breathing like a man trying to hold himself together. Inside, Alara lay awake, eyes open in the dark. Her heart did not hurt because of the contract. It hurt because he had been alone in that fear for so long that he thought love was something that could ruin him. Morning came slowly. The house quiet too. Quiet Alara stepped into the hallway and found Damien sitting at the top of the stairs, not polished, not controlled, not the man the world feared. Just Damien. He looked up at her and there was no mask left. Alara, his voice was low, rough, almost broken. I wanted to keep you, but I did not know how to deserve you. Did not move closer. Not yet, you did not trust me to stay, she said softly. So you never gave me the chance to choose. He lowered his head. Yes, the honesty hurt. But it was real. And real was what they had never allowed themselves to have, before either of them could speak again. A sharp sound cut the air. Footsteps. Urgent, frantic, the head of Damien's security appeared, eyes tight with alarm. We intercepted communication from inside the company. Someone is attempting to transfer controlling shares to a private account in Catalina. Wolf's Nami. Alara's breath caught. Damien stood slowly, the calm in him terrifying cold, clear-focused in a way that did not break, but sharpened. Prepare the boardroom. He said, voice steady like iron call. Every executive, every legal representative, she will not take what my mother built. He walked past Alara but stopped when his shoulder aligned with hers. Not touching, just close. I do not ask you to forgive me. I only ask do not leave before I return. Alara looked up at him, and though her heart was still bruised, she nodded. I will not leave. For the first time, he let himself breathe. When Damien arrived at the Wolf Empire building, the board was already gathered. Catalina seated at the head of the table like a queen claiming her throne. She smiled when he entered. You are too late, Damien. I have already secured the transfer. The empire belongs to me. Now Damien placed a folder on the table. Calm, measured, no. It belongs to my mother, and she left it in my name. Not yours. She opened the folder, revealing signed statements, legal recordings, and a confession Catalina had made long ago. A confession Damien had kept hidden, waiting for the day he would need to stop her. The room went still. The confession said one thing: Catalina had manipulated Damien's father, taken control of the estate, and driven Damien's mother to the edge that ended her life. The board did not speak. They did not need to. Catalina's face cracked, the first fracture in a woman who believed herself unbreakable. Damien's voice was quiet, but final. You will never touch this family again. Security escorted her out, the doors closed, and Damien, for the first time in his life, chose to go home, not to a house. To her. Damien returned home just before sunset. The sky was painted in soft orange and fading gold, the kind of light that makes the world look gentle, even when nothing inside feels gentle at all. Alara was in the garden again, hands in the lavender, breathing. Slowly, as if the earth could steady her heartbeat, she heard footsteps behind her, but she did not turn. She already knew it was him. He stopped a few steps away, not reaching, not demanding, just standing in the space where truth finally had to be spoken. Lara. His voice was quiet. No command, no distance, just her name. The way someone says home. She closed her eyes, not to shut him out, but to gather courage. Then she turned to face him. He looked tired, not weak, but human. The armor of Damien Wolf gone only. Damien standing there. He stepped closer, slowly giving her time to stop him. If she wished, she did not. I kept the contract because I was afraid, he said softly. I grew up believing that attachment destroys, that love is a wound you never recover from. But you... He paused, searching for the right truth. You are the only place I have ever felt safe. Alara's breath trembled. Once she would have filled silence with apologies or explanations. but now she let the silence speak for both of them. He continued, voice raw like something newly uncovered. I sleep when you are near. I breathe when you are near without you. This house is only walls without you. I am only the thing they made me. And I do not want to be that anymore. Her eyes softened. Not because the pain vanished, but because the love was real. Damian reached into his coat and pulled out a single document, the same contract that had broken her heart. Except now it was torn cleanly in half. He held the pieces out to her. No more arrangements. No, more roles. No more fear if you stay. It is because you choose me, not the empire, not the obligation. Me, the pieces of paper fluttered softly in the garden breeze. The only sound between them, Alara stepped forward close enough to feel his breath. She placed her hand against his chest, right over his heartbeat. Steady, strong, open. I choose you, she said. And the words were simple, but they changed everything. He pulled her into him then, not with hunger, not with desperation, but with the reverence of a man who had never believed he would be held like this. Their foreheads touched their breaths, tangled, their hearts aligned. Weeks passed, the mansion felt different now. Lighter, lived in. Warm Damian began sitting at the piano in the evenings, not playing, just resting his hands on the keys, and one night Alara placed her hand over his together. They pressed the first note, a single sound, soft, trembling, alive, and it felt like a beginning. Months later, Alara stood in the garden again, but this time she held something small in her hands, a tiny white envelope. A simple test. Damian walked toward her. Curiosity already softening into understanding. She looked up, eyes shining, voice barely a whisper. We are not alone anymore. Damian's breath broke not, from pain but from joy so strong it stole sound. He fell to his knees in front of her, hands trembling as they rested against her stomach. His forehead against her body, a silent promise made in the quiet evening air. He spoke only one sentence, but it held everything he had ever been afraid to say. You are my forever, and she whispered back, and you are mine. The empire did not define them anymore. Fear did not rule them anymore. Love did. And the man who once married for appearances could not sleep, could not breathe, could not live. Without her touch, her presence, her heart, home was not the mansion, home was her, and